What's up? All right, I'm gonna get started in a second. Just have all my stuff set up. Okay, I can see the chat and then mute. Cool. I'm just gonna wait 1 second to get started. So let's see. You can see what's on the screen so far. And so last week we got all this in over 3 1-hour sessions with a couple tangents. And so what you're looking at is the bones of a site that has a little header at the top, the initial part of a search, a categories list that's blank, and is pulling in data from Airtable to populate these cards of no-code software. So that's where we're at now. And I think for today, my plan is mostly styling stuff. But the first thing I'll do is I'm going to pull the categories list in using a special Airtable action that'll pull the category I want to filter, like by column name. It'll find unique values and list them there. And then we'll just style everything. So that categories list is going to have states for when a category is selected or not, and a hover state and all that stuff. So kind of not advanced. It's actually pretty simple, but some kind of more advanced styles in that section. And then I figured I'd finish out with the search input that needs a lot of styling and some of the spacing around the pages. Basically, by the end of today, hopefully I'll have something that looks pretty nice and feels really good. I mean, there'll still be more details to do, but I feel like right now it looks a little hodgepodge or a little off, and we could clean that up just for our heads or my head. And then one thing to mention, I from the first live, I think it was the first day, might have been the second, I pulled in a font and it didn't work. And I realized just thinking about it, I haven't gone back in there yet, but I realized that I think it's because we're pulling 2 Google fonts on the same page. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I've never run into it before because I actually use Adobe fonts usually. They're not free though, so Google Fonts is a better demo. So I'm just gonna double check with some of the team, make sure that's what's happening, and then I'll show you the best way to approach that. And that comes from the default font in Builder is Cabin, which is a Google font. So most likely I'll just have to either remove that or change it a little. But I don't know if I'll do that today. It's not that important. Right now, everything you're looking at, except for the menu items there, everything's using that default Builder font called Cabin, and it looks fine. So I'm not too worried about it. I'd rather do some more heavyweight stuff. All right, so I'm gonna get started now. I'm gonna pull in these categories, and I haven't actually, I built the Airtable pattern originally, and I haven't actually played with this categories one yet, but it worked in my test, so I'm gonna do it live now and we'll see how it goes. Let me see actually if I have a demo for it in the pattern workspace. I might not have published actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I wonder if I made it and haven't published yet, but I think I did. Maybe I didn't actually, because it's not in here. Let me double check. If I don't have that action, I'm just gonna hard code them in and then it'll be no problem. What I'm doing now is I'm just gonna look to see if the action exists. So I'm just gonna search through here. Yeah, I think I need to republish that pattern, and then I'll be able to get those. So you know what? Actually, this is a Builder live stream. Let's go republish that pattern now. I wish I remember the ID, but I don't. All right, well that's loading. And so what I'm going to do to republish a pattern, this is pretty cool, is I have a project that is the pattern, and in Builder you have a development deployment that you're working in. There's a test deployment and a production deployment. So what's in the Airtable pattern development deployment right now, what I'm working on is not live. It's not in the actual pattern deployment, but I did work on it and add things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in to this Airtable patterns project. See it over here, and I'm going to publish it to the patterns deployment. And what that'll do, actually, maybe I won't go. Maybe I'll just show this, because really, actually, I'd have to like re-import it in my project and stuff that I don't necessarily want to go through. But you can see it definitely looks different, so I didn't publish. There's this stuff down here And I can see right here, there's probably an action, get filter options. So yeah, maybe I'll do this next week. I'll clean this up so I won't waste anyone's time. But this is basically, it's really actually cool. It's you select where your Airtable data is on the page, selecting an element here, and then you just set a field. So in this demo, the field's called book. And then you set where you put the filter options into, and it'll take a value. So on no code list, it's easier to show you in the live version actually. I have these categories that some tools have one, some tools have multiple, but they're each category has a lot of tools under it. So like websites, blockchain, data and databases, integrations, those are all categories. And you can create this list by saying this field is called categories. I specify the field name categories and where the Airtable data is, and it takes care of the rest. It'll put the list here. Each one of these can have all their own actions on it and everything, and it'll remove duplicates and order it however I want. But I don't want to go too far off on that tangent. I really wanted to get these styles in. So what I'm going to do for right now is I'm actually just going to make, I'll do like the setup of what it would be, and I'm just going to do dummy data. So the way that I'm going to put these categories lists, I'm actually not going to type it down the page, which you might think, or I'm not going to just paste link, or text box. What I'm actually going to do is something similar to these cards, where I'm going to create a page for each one of these categories. So it looks like just a piece of text. It looks like just that. Oops, just that. But what it is it's going to be its own page, because when you click on it, it's going to have actions and it's going to be dynamic. It's going to do things. And so instead of basically managing all those outside, like on a main project, instead I create a page for each of these and I manage all those actions once on this one page. So the first thing I can do is create that page, and I can drag this anywhere onto the canvas. And what this is it's a category row. So I'll call it category row. And then in the category row for now, I'm just going to put, I'm just going to put a text box. I could put a link there, but you know, links have more in, like a link is an A tag and has an href. What I put is less specific, but I'm going to add stuff to it later to make it function more like a link. So that's my page. And then I'm going to create a list here so that I can pull in this page for as many categories as there are. And for that, I'm going to use a list of rows. I could use list of cards, which is like what this is out here, but this is a list of rows. And for this list of rows, I'll set the row page property to category row. And then you can see there's 3 where it says text box. There's 3 of them in there. And so if this said category name, you'd see those all update. And what I'm going to do for this right now, I can see there's 3 rows in there, and that has to do with the defaults on this element. And I showed this before, but it's right here. It's actually a JSON. It's an array of JSON objects. And so you don't have to ever care about this really, but if you do want to either display it differently in the editor, you can set more of these or set values into these. Or if you are pulling data, if you plan to pull data in, but right now you don't have data yet, then you can set something on the front end for these, just like some default data on the front end. Because right now, even though I see these 3 in here, if I live view this, I wouldn't see anything, because it's expecting me to pull this data in either from Airtable like the other ones, or more commonly from the builder data. But you can also pull them in from like any array or a JSON array. You can do a lot more with these lists. It's pretty cool. So yeah, so the property I'm going to set for now, point of all that, is some default data here. And maybe I'll actually put some category names in just so this looks cool. So right now I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 empty objects inside of an array. That's what this syntax is, which is pretty straightforward, you know, JSON syntax. And then I think these are called value, and I can change this later. This is just for testing. So if I say like that, value websites for the first one, and I say like this, value APIs for the second one, and I say value apps, etc. It'll actually write in, once I link this up, it'll say, instead of category name, it'll say websites, apps, whatever. And let me just double check. I'm hearing messages. I want to make sure something's not wrong with the live stream. Most likely it's not. All right, cool. All right. And then, whoops. So, all right, so we pull those in. We've got this default data. Let me just fill these other three out. I'm actually just going to type websites. There's no reason for me to differentiate. And so right now, if I live view this, you'll actually just see 6 rows that say category name. I have the live view open, actually. They're in there already. Most things update live. So they say category name. They have a page style on them, giving them a white background. I can see that kind of stuff. But what I really want them to do is say the actual category name. So in here, this category name element, this text box, can get bound with data, with variables or data from the database, depending on your setup. In this case, I defaulted that, and I'm going to use variables, and I'll show you how it works once it's set up. But what I do is, you have property styling, events, and data on every element. I go into this data tab, and I just want to set this element to just this one record's value. So I go, well, in this case, I go from variable. You could do field like a data collection field, but in this case, I do from variable. And the variable, I believe I called it value when I wrote that JSON, and I'll double check. And what that does is on this page, or on this list of rows element, where I have this default data, one row is that value, and then a value, and then a key, which is in this case called value, which is kind of confusing. And then a value, which is called websites, which is set to websites. So when I use the variable called value on this page, so this list is putting multiple of this page. When I use that variable value, it knows what row it's on, and it uses this JSON. Each key here is created as a default variable on that page. So when I use the variable value to populate that category name, I knew it was there because of this JSON array. Which, if I didn't write this JSON array by hand, if I pulled in collection data or Airtable data, I would just know what the field names are, the column names, and those are variables, which is a really powerful thing. It's like a context thing. It's like this list of rows knows that this page is in the context of the row it's in, so it can pull from the data collections without specifying an ID, but it knows what the ID is. It can pull variables like this by default. It can do a few other things. So in this case, if I live viewed, you can see it's now updated websites, APIs, apps, and then I set the last 3 as websites because I was lazy. So that part is working. And then really quickly before I keep going, remember there's this page body class that's on everything that in the future may or may not even be a default, but right now it is. So I only use this main class if it's like an actual URL routed like root page, main page. This is a component basically, so I just remove the class. And when I remove the class, that white background will go away. So now we see this list of categories. Right now it's nothing though. I mean, it's just text. Even though it's like a repeated list, we use JSON and we did stuff to make it. All it is just probably a p tag, p tag, p tag, p tag. Simple HTML. But what I'll do is I'll put all the functionality on here through styles. I mean, the actual actions, when you click a filter and it filters, we'll set that up next. But for the hover state, the selected state, the state to unselected, all those things, we'll just do that all in CSS. And so category name is a text box here. It can be anything though. In this case, it happens, I can see right here, it's a p tag. And so what I'll do is I'll come in here and I'm going to actually remove the default text box class because we don't need it. If I were using this in a different way, like a more universal text box, I might keep that because maybe I have it styled. And if I choose later, maybe I'll even put that back on. But for now, I just removed it because I don't want any extra properties in this very specific section. It's like I know what I want here, and so I'm just going to go for it. So you can see on here, it removed the font. That's okay for now. Primary style class, this is like a thing, like it's a filter or it's a category row, and it's the main one. So I might basically like there's a software page, a resources page, a stacks page. Each one of those pages has a setup like this, and this is kind of a universal thing I'm setting up. So I'll create a primary style class called, for now I'm just gonna call it category row. And I can always change that later and it updates everywhere, so no big deal. Category row. Category row, let's see. So I need a few kind of default things, which I'll take from here. And one thing to note that I saw this flash, see how I added that spacing in here when I removed the base class? That's not from this category row class. That would be like if this had no classes. This spacing comes from the p tag, because p tags, HTML thing, p tags have a margin top and bottom on them by default. So previously when it had that text box class on here, that actually overwrote the margins to 0. And that's why it looks like that. So just a thing to note, you know, some of these items, some of these elements, when they come out of the box, they have properties on them. And sometimes HTML elements, or HTML, yeah, I mean elements, but you know, raw, no styles, no class HTML element sometimes does have default styles on it. So it's a good thing to be aware of if you're not used to that from code. If you code, you might kind of know all those things second nature because they come up a lot. So let me go to this no code list. And what I'm doing is I'm going to inspect the element here, and then I'm going to figure out what all the styles are. And with any luck, I'll be able to just copy paste them, but we'll see. And I'm not going to set the main size and font yet, because if you remember, I set the base font and the base font size in like a page body class, and that's on the body tag, which is like all the way at the top. And then everything else is controlled relative to that. So instead of setting up the font now and the sizing now, because I don't have it set at the base level yet, I'll just ignore that. But I do want to get any of the other classes that are on there. Like a good example is this top one here, cursor pointer. That's what makes it look like a link, get the little hand. So if I didn't have cursor pointer and you rolled over these, it looked like text. And as you can imagine, you know, from a user, you know, in this case, I see a rollover, maybe it's not so bad, but it's still weird. And from a user perspective, that cursor is weird there. You know, if you click on it, you want it to be this hand pointer. And there could be more things on here. So I can see right here, at least these 4, and they make sense to copy over. So the way I'm gonna do this, remember I created that class already for category row. The way I'm gonna do this, because I'm copying and pasting CSS, you know, I could add properties one by one here, or I could add edit all properties here. But instead, I'm going to come right into the CSS, paste what I just did. You don't have to clean up these spaces, but I'll clean up these a little. Save changes. And now they show up there, like, you know, as builder properties. And this width looks like it's not filled out, but I actually use a custom property there. So if I hit enter manually, you can see it's the value I filled out. That's actually not a super browser compatible value, I don't think, fit content. So use it with caution if you just saw that and thought it was a good idea. It's really useful, but I don't know how well supported it is. Okay, so those 4. Let's see what else we got on here. That's nothing. Okay. LI, UL. I think that might actually be all the styles that are on the actual LI for like, or the list item for that, for those categories, which is not too much. And then the actual list itself, list style none is defaulted into builder, so I know I don't need to do that. Margin bottom, and padding. I don't know if I'll need this. Oh yeah, there's a submit button. So I'll add this in just like this. I'll do the margin bottom of 4 rem, margin 0, padding 0. And that's on the list itself, which is this element. And I don't know if this one, I forget if we added a specific, we added cards. So this element has a list of rows outer on it, which makes it width 100%, changes the margin, actually centers it and removes top and bottom margin, displays it as flex, set some other stuff. In this case, it's a direct list of rows down a page, so I actually don't need a lot of these properties. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove that, and you can see it changed. They're indented now, but they mostly still work and look good. And then I'll just add the properties back that I was just looking at, which is these. List style none is there. I don't need to add it, but I'll add it for fun maybe. Let's copy these. Margin bottom, margin and padding. And now this element, the main primary class was called cards. So I'll just call this one categories. And when you get into more complex apps, web apps, or when you get into maybe like something where you don't know what you're going to build in the future, sometimes it helps to be a little more specific with naming. I mean, categories is a specific term, but I could get even more specific and say, you know, like left nav dash categories or home dash categories, depending. You know, you can get the more descriptive you are with the names, basically, the easier time you'll have building in the future, because you'll know right what everything is. In this case, I know that every page follows the same thing and there's only one category, so I just call it categories. All right, so same thing. I'm going to come into the CSS and paste what I just typed, or what I just copied, I mean. And now they're in here. And you can see an interesting thing that Builder lets you do, which is pretty cool in my opinion, is I have a margin property here where I set all 4 margins. And then just like I could do in code in CSS, I overwrite just one of them with margin bottom 4 rem. And the reason I say it's cool is because it's flexible enough that nothing breaks if I do that. But also to be a little more succinct with that, I could actually right in here set that margin bottom to 4 rem and then delete this one. And that's actually the same output. And it's a very common concept in code that I find that a lot of people who are new to building are surprised by. But you know, there's a million ways to do everything. And there's just like, there's not as much right and wrong as you think in code. It's like, there's just, if you get creative and it works, it works. And in Builder kind of follows that mentality. So it's cool. Little quirks like that aren't going to matter. And I can do things in different ways. And truthfully, especially in this case, it doesn't matter at all. Sometimes you might add in like a lot of extra, you know, garbage in there that's making it take longer to load. Like you could make it matter, but usually it doesn't. So it's super flexible. All right, so that's the list row itself, or the list itself. I got each row. And then I think now we can probably do these states. So the way it works right now on the live site is we've got, when you hover over, it gets a little bit highlighted and there's a plus sign. And then when you click it, well, I'll move off first. It gets a little darker highlighted and has a check mark, meaning like you're selected on this filter, this category. And then if you hover over one that's selected, instead of a plus, it gets an X, which is like remove this category. And then when you click it, it removes. And so, you know, there's the states stay if you don't move, like, but it's a good system. And so the first thing I can do, so in this inspect element, when I hover over here, I can see the hover, but over here, I don't see any of the properties for hover. But what I can do is right click any element in here and I can force state. So I can force a state of hover. And now when I look at it, even though I'm not hovered on it, I can see its hovered state here. And when I'm clicking here, I can actually see the properties for the hover. So, oh, you know, so this is actually really advanced. I see it right here. It's this before. So this is, I mean, it's cool. It's cool to go over, but it's not like a super simple one. Like I thought it would be very straightforward, but that's okay. So what I'm doing is I'm using CSS before and after, which I believe are called pseudo states. Like hover is a state and before and after is a pseudo state. But anyway, what it does is it creates like a new little container of content that you can do things with. So in this case, I'm guessing, I'll check in a second, but I'm guessing that before adds this background and like inserts a plus in there. And so I'm using that. You could set that up in a lot of ways. You could set that up with actions where it's doing something in Builder to combine something and make that plus and whatever. Or you can do it in pure CSS, which looks like what I did here. So if I click on this before state, it's got pretty much what I said, a background that's black but almost fully transparent. The content, which is like it's adding in actual text, has the plus. And then I have an opacity 1 on there for some reason. We'll probably find out. And then, oh, that's on the hover before, I see. And then the regular before, if you're not hovered, has its own properties. So this is interesting. So before we get to the hover, actually, let me remove this state. When we're on this LI, I copied these properties, these 4 properties here. I didn't even look, but really there's this a before state that has a bunch more properties on it. So what I can actually do, before I copy this, let's see. So what I can actually do in Builder is when I'm on this LI here, which is like a list item, this one page, and I have it called category row, have properties on it. Normally you add a state here, like hover, disabled, or any state you want. So you can do that same thing with pseudo states. And it's a little bit tricky as far as like browser compatibility stuff. Like I don't know, I'm not up to date on what the exact way, if you do 1 colon or 2 colons, like people do different ways. But the way I usually write it is I write a normal state like colon hover, and I write pseudo states like colon colon after, colon colon before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one. It's going to add the 1 colon by default. And so what I do for before and afters is I just add 1 here, but I know that it's going to add that default. It's going to be 2. And that's, you can see in my, there's 2 colons here and the before. You can do 1. I know you can do 1. I just like, for some reason, have it in my head. It's not browser compatible, but at this point, maybe it could be. Like I might have learned that 5 years ago. So anyway, I add 1 for before. And now I can see in here, I have CSS before, and I'm just going to get 1 property. So background of basically transparent is what that means. So if I added background RGBA, and what I just added here is a color. So if you don't know what this is, you might be familiar with colors that look like this, like a hex color. RGBA is the red value, the green value, the blue value, and then an alpha value. And so the way colors work is they have RGB, red, green, and blue, and they have anywhere from 0 to 255. Sorry. And so white is 255, 255, 255. Black is 0, 0, 0. And then like you can make every other color in between by different numbers in those 3. And then alpha is the transparency. So 0 means fully transparent. Like if I ran this, you wouldn't see anything. This is black, fully transparent. And then black, fully opaque would be 1. And so you can do anywhere in between, like half viewable would be 0.5. So in this case, we're starting the background with that. We've got border radius. I'll talk about content in a second because it's like a special one for the before and afters. So border radius, 7 pixels, height, 100%. So border radius, whoops, radia. And now this is a cool thing to know. I did this on accident, but it says border radia, and I forgot the S. So what Builder will do is create a property called border radia. It's not a valid HTML property or, etc. But Builder won't like flag you on that because maybe you're trying to do that. So, and what would happen if I did that and didn't notice the S was off is I wouldn't see that border radius and I'd be confused and I'd inspect it and I'd look and then I'd notice the S is gone and I have to come change it. But I didn't mean to do that. So I removed it and redid it, or I could have come into the CSS and just added the S in there. So border radius, I think I said height 100%. I saw margin left in there, I believe. This is another quick little cheat for what I do. I'll show you in a second. Opacity, padding left, position. So I just load in the properties. So I'll be like opacity, and I don't set the value, position, padding left, and then transition, width, and Z index. And I don't know why I didn't just copy paste these. I just thought I'd do something different. But you can just copy paste these the same way I did for the other one. So height was 100%. This margin left, It has a margin left of negative 1.25 M. I'm guessing that has to do with putting this plus in here. We'll know in a second. So margin left, negative 1.25 M. Opacity 0. Padding left 0.25. Absolute. Okay. I'm just filling these out quick and then I'll explain what they are. Just don't remember those last two. Calc and a z-index. These have some crazy properties on them. Who knows why? So this width, it was calc. Like that. Calc 100% plus 1.75 M. But I set the calc value in builder, so all I need to write in here is this. And that's everything. That was absolute, right? Yeah. So what I set up just now with all those properties is a little pill that goes, I call it a pill, but this highlight that has rounded corners that goes around this, has a plus sign in it. And, you know, it goes under the z-index -1 is what's making it go under these words. So that's all that I'm creating. But what I wrote just now was not the hover state. What I wrote was a default state, which is why we made the background color transparent. We made the opacity 0, that kind of thing. So right now all that stuff's there, but it's all hidden on purpose. And then when we hover over, I'm going to change those properties to make it show up. So that's where here, when I force state hover and then check the before, there's some change states. But there's one last step before I get into it. The hover, which is the befores and the afters, just those two, those pseudo states. They only work if you have a property on there called content. And this is a CSS thing, not a builder thing. So if you don't have content filled out, none of these properties do anything. And as far as I know, that content property in CSS doesn't do anything anywhere else. Like it's not used. So in this case, I don't want any actual content. I don't want it to display anything. So I think I just typed a space in there. If I look here, this one's not hovered. Content space. It's in quotes, but space. So that's what I do there. And that's like a really specific random quirk about the befores and afters, you know, just how they work. So I know that I need to set that content. So that's why I have that set. And then now we can do, so that's all defaults and happens to be before. So now what we can do is we're on category row and we can go to the hover state. And on the hover state, normally you change a property directly, but in our case here, we're gonna add the before state into the hover. So the way that we do this is, and actually now that I'm talking this through and realizing I have to do this, I've never tried this, so I'm hoping this works. But basically you can see here we have like :hover. What I actually want is I want it to look like this: :hover, :before, or : before. And so in here I created before. Now I'm actually going to create one called, let me just start here just in case, called hover before, or you could do like before like that. And on hover before, which is this one, we're setting these 3 properties. So we're setting the background color, it's no longer transparent, setting the content to plus, which is that right there, and setting the opacity to 1, which means it'll be visible. So we can go content to plus, opacity to 1, and then background color. I think it was 0.8, maybe not. 0.8, and it's just background. And it doesn't actually matter background color or background here. So that property said background in no code list, but background color is more specific, so it'll work. Background is like a shortcut to do a bunch of background properties in one tag. All right, so that's all that. And then that should work now at this point, I believe. So let's test this. No guarantees since I've never done all this together once, but let's hope. Doesn't look like it worked. So let's check out why. Okay. Oh, you know, it could be confusing because of this P tag in here, which NoCodeList doesn't have, but let's find out. It looks like actually there's no before or after on this, or before as I try to do, there's no before on this element. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear cache and refresh just in case, but there could be something going on there. Yeah, I don't see those befores. And I wonder... Oh, did that not save? Wait, what just happened? Oh, that's in there. I didn't put anything on hover. So I wonder if it has to do with maybe this being that, or I wonder if it has to do with... Oh yeah, because that before wasn't even showing up. I don't know if this will work. I'm gonna try this. If this doesn't work, whatever, I'll do this next. I'll figure out why it didn't work and do this next time. It's not a big deal. And like I mentioned before, like I was kind of scared of some of this stuff. Like maybe something wouldn't work because it's beta, but it's not a huge deal. It's everything in Builder that I've run into, like literally everything that hasn't worked, I've been able to find a workaround. It's really wild. Yeah, I don't see befores. I don't want to do too much troubleshooting if I can help it, like back and forth trial and error on these calls. I mean, I'll do a little like I'm doing right now, but I'll come back to that just, you know, just to not waste anyone's time. And so I guess I can't style anything in there for that, if that's the case, but I can style a lot of other stuff. So I'm going to start styling some other stuff. Really, the whole point is it bothers me how this looks right now. Like it looks, you know, I have a design mind more than a code mind actually. And I just can't, you know, I'd call it a weakness. I can't see this. So let's start in on some of this stuff. And basically what I want to do is I want to add some spacing and some padding, and I want to, you know, style this input and just like start to get it looking a little closer to what it should be. And then like I only have 20 minutes left in this hour, but if I did have time after that, I would start it on that font because I think I can fix the font without too much trouble. But for now, I'm just going to start like at the top, at the outside, set some spacing stuff and work my way down. So the first thing that I can see on NoCodeList live site here is the first difference, I should say, is this space on top. Like that's butted right up against the top. So let's see. I'm just going to look. I might change some. Like I don't know if I'll copy these exactly, but I'm just going to look at how each thing's done just as a shortcut. So it looks like header is what's giving it that space. The header just has padding top 5M. And it looks like it's in a media query, which means that changes based on the screen size. So I wonder if I can get it. Well, I can't get it to do a bigger one, but let's see. Looks like the default is 6M on top. So the way to write padding, when you write it like this, you can write padding dash top, you can write padding dash left, or you can write padding, which it's a shortcut to include all 4 sides. So if you write padding like this, 6M is the top, it kind of starts at the top and goes clockwise. 0 is the right padding, and you can see in the green, it's kind of highlighted up there where the paddings are. 2M is the bottom padding, and 0 is the right padding. So I'll take these. And this is header. I've got section header in here. Oh, did I not call that? So I didn't make a specific class for the header yet, but each of the sections in NoCodeList, if you remember, has a section NoCodeList class. So I'm going to add one in here called header. Now I could actually take this section for NoCode. I especially could because it has no properties in it. It's not doing anything. I could take this and copy it and call it like header NoCodeList and then change a few things, keep it a base, a primary style. It really doesn't matter. It's like almost personal preference. There's some differences, but it's very specific. In this case, instead, I just added a utility class on top. Really, no big deal either way. And then padding, I can do it, GUI with the graphical user interface like this. And that's 6020. So that's what we saw wherever it was, right here. Or I could have come into the CSS and just been like padding and then, pasted that in. Doesn't matter which way you do. But anyway, you can see that up there that showed up. And this is on the header component. So it overlapped a little, but it applies, anywhere it's included. So that's got that, plus it's got that bottom padding. And we can see it already starting to look a little nicer in here. And I didn't need to refresh. That's kind of a weird habit. I just clicked refresh there. But you can see it was already live. So a lot of things, not every last thing, but a lot of things in Builder updates live in that live view through something called resonance, called data listeners. And you can use data listeners in your own projects so what's happening when it updates here is the live view, something in the data gets changed and it has a data listener on it, and the live view is listening for that. So it updates live based on the change. So if I change a style property, like I added padding here, that just updated live. And your users, they don't work in development, so they might not see, they're not viewing the development version, so they might not see a style property change. But if someone adds data, or say you have a system where there's upvoting and one person upvotes, everyone else who has that page open, if there's a data listener on it, will get that live update pushed to their site. So if these had upvotes and this here had an upvote with a counter of 8, and then someone in a different country or whatever upvoted it, I would see it live update right there. So data listeners are really cool, but that's how live view, it's built on those. Builder has a lot built in with the data listeners. So it's going to update for you live as you're building. And most of the time you can make a change, check it, make a change, check it. I have like 15 years or however long it's been of development under my belt. So I have this habit of like, make a change here, refresh, make a change, click refresh. So that's just me. Let's see. So we got that. Now, one thing I can see that I know we didn't do yet is this side padding. So no matter how small the window gets, it's always going to have a little bit of padding on the side. And my guess would be that right now ours won't. It already doesn't. So you can see it's butted right up. So on my bigger screen, when this was pulled out, it does have a max width. So it looks like it has padding on the side, but that's really because this center column has a max width and it's centered. So we need to now add some spacing on the side for when you're at small screens, especially like mobile phone size, which is more like this. And here's a cool thing to note too. You can see we didn't do that responsive yet. So everything just shrunk down at mobile, whereas the real no-code list stacks and the filters slide out and a thing like that. So, and we'll build all that in Builder too. So let's see, I'll pull this back out big. Let's say inner, main, and wrapper. And these actual inner, main, and wrapper classes, or setup, I should say, comes from Ghost. So I didn't set this part up, but wrapper is full, main is full, and it looks like inner is what's going to be what we're looking for. Here we go. So right now, based on the screen size, I can see this is in a media query. Based on the screen size, it says a padding top of 0, a right padding of 4M, a left padding of 4M, and a padding bottom of 0.1M, which is strange. I don't know what that's for. But I want to start with the desktop version. I'm not going to type those values in here because that's for this specific screen size. But I can look down in this code here and it shows me what gets overridden with the responsive. So right now it's using this padding, which is for max width 1280 screens. But that's overriding one if the max width was 1680. So if it's bigger than 1280 but smaller than 1600, it's taking this media query. If it's over 1600, it would take this one, which has a padding of 5M on the sides. And then I just want to make sure. It looks like this one with no media query has a padding of 6M on the sides. It's being overridden, and that's probably the one we need. That's probably the top level one. Okay. And I don't see, well, I'm trying to find like a max width. Okay, here's the max width. Okay, so here's what we have. We have padding on the sides of 6M when it's big. And then we have a max width, where'd that go? That calculates 1700 pixels plus 12M. And the reason we do that, or the reason I did that, is because I want the column in the center to actually be 1700 pixels max width. When it's smaller than that, I want to have padding on the side. But when it's bigger than that, I don't want it 1700 and then add padding. I want that padding to be outside of the 1700. So all that is to say I do this calculation instead where if the left side is 6 padding and the right side is 6M padding, total that's 12M. So the actual maximum width I want isn't 1700, but it's 1700 plus that padding, which makes the center column appear 1700. So all that to say, I'm going to set 1700 pixels plus 12M here, and then I'm going to set the padding here. And I'll just copy and paste both these. And I think that I'll probably change that, especially the way that padding is. I might change that, but for now that makes total sense and it'll match and look good. I don't have to think about it. The reason I say I'll change it is because I can see that at a smaller, actually, you know what? I take that back. I don't have to change it. I was going to say at a smaller media query, I'd have to change not just the padding, but also the max width, but I don't because it'll always be under 1700 pixels anyway, and it'll just work. So I'll use this method. So, okay, that stuff I was looking at was the center column. And in that page, it was like wrapper, main, whatever was in it. In my setup here, I have that section no code list class. That's actually, well, actually I want the one right inside of that container, but those are the ones I'm going to use. So I did this the first day. So I don't know. Here we can test. All right, search is a perfect one to test on. So I did, every section down the page has a section class, which is full width, no matter how big that browser is. And then inside of every section, I had a container with a container class. And the container class gets a max width, and the container class gets margin and left right auto, which centers it. And that's essentially the one we were just looking at. The container class here is the equivalent of that. And so the way I set it up is there's a section for every vertical bar, like every vertical section down the page. And then inside of it, there's a container. And what that allows me to do is if I wanted to have on a different site, since this one's all yellow, but if I wanted to have like a white top hero section and then a banner of blue bar, but that blue bar goes edge to edge on the screen, no matter how big the screen is, and yet the content inside stays in the same column as everything else on the site. If you think about all those things I said, it's just like a tricky setup. So that's why I do section with a specific set of styles on it, and then container with a specific set of styles for everything. And that way I know that these sections can have different backgrounds. They're each different sections, but everything right inside of it has that container class, which if I change the styles in the container class once, if I change it in one place, they update everywhere. So I'm on the thing I need to be on here. So in this case, I was in section search, and I saw that they have the section class here, and then I come to this first container, and I can see the container class. But I could go into any of these because section main also has section class, and then container has that container no code list class. So it doesn't matter where I enter from, but I get to this no code list container class, and when I change these styles, they affect everything. So the first thing, we did that max width. Oops, it was a calc. And it was 1700 plus 12M. Margin left and right auto I'm going to keep because I want that column to center. And then we had that padding stuff. And the padding had like 0.1 M on the bottom, which I don't know why right now. Seems like a strange thing, but I'm just going to put it back on there because it was on there. And then these sides were 6M, oops, and 6M. Okay. And now, so that's column center, okay. And what's interesting here is I see these are pushing off screen. I wonder why that's happening, but we'll find out in a second. So let's double check this one. And what I'm gonna do now is look at this in this window and then look at it in the real no-code list window and just see if they look kind of similar. Because I know that that stuff generally probably worked, and on this small live screen stream, it's actually hard for me to test it. I just have like a small part that I'm sharing. So let's see, because I can't go much bigger. I mean, I can't go any bigger than this. So that to that. I mean, it looks pretty close. So we know we're in the ballpark. And then the only other thing I test is that when this shrinks, these sides might look a little big right now because we didn't do responsive. But when this shrinks, I want to make sure there's still padding on the sides. And I can see there is, because it's on this side. This side's pushing off, but I think that has something to do with these cards. So I'm going to check that in a second. All right. And then let me, okay. Let's check into that right now because that's going to bother me. List of cards. Okay, so the list of cards itself doesn't look like it has anything on it. That doesn't. I'm gonna have to inspect this. So we got, this is the card. Nothing super crazy on it, but I wonder, where's that class? Oh, I see, that's the card itself. I'm just curious what happened if I put a max width 100% on there. All right, it's not that. Okay, so I'm gonna go up to the actual UL, which is the unordered list that contains all of these. And let's see, we got 0 padding and margin, display grid with some gaps, border box is good, so that's all good. Okay, and then I'll test this one. What happened if I put a max width on here? Nothing. Okay, and so now I'm going to go one up from that. I have CSS grid here for categories and the actual cards. And so this div here that's holding all the cards, just checking it, has nothing on it. And then, I can see something's going on here. So this is the class, the styles that form like the category column on the left and then the bigger right column with all the software. And when I hover over it, I can see that it's got some kind of a width there. It's doing something weird where the content's pushing out. So my guess is this is going to be the problem. So let's look at what we've got. I can see display grid, the template. This actually should be plus. I realized should be like that, which makes it even worse. But that's actually how the real site is. And I'll fix that in the code. That's not permanent what I just did. All right, so that's got nothing else. That's very interesting. So maybe if I did something on here with 100%, no, max width. No, surprising. Okay, so that's not doing anything. So let's check one up from this, and I can see. So I hover on this. I can see it's blue and doesn't match the content in it. I know something's up. I go one up from it. I see that same blue, but there's some padding there. So I'm like, ooh, maybe this is the one. Oh, this is that main body class. Okay. So now this, is the container that we just set that's centering everything. So I know that's correct. That's how I want it. The first thing inside of here is pushing outside. And it makes me wonder, oh, you know what? It might just be because I didn't do responsive yet, now that I think about it. Maybe it can't shrink those enough. But it makes me, sorry for that tangent. It makes me wonder if I just need to set a position on one of these things. Like the max width inside of here is supposed to be that 1700. Maybe it just doesn't have a position. So I'm just going to test a few things on here. Yeah, that's strange. Let's make sure this H2 doesn't have some weird properties. You never know, like something in there is pushing it off screen, so you never know what it is. And again, I don't want to make this too boring. If I can't figure this out, I'm just going to move on. Yeah, that's strange. So I would say like sometimes this happens, but like 90% of the time you go into something like this and you can just turn on or off a few of these toggles and you can instantly find the problem. Like for example, if I set this to 1 fractional width, it looks like it's perfect, like it's gonna work even at small sizes. That's a little off there. Something's off with it for sure. But that's actually that's much closer. 2, it's still pushing it off, so something's up there. Something must be up with that display grid. All right, I'm not gonna waste any time on this for right now. I'm gonna figure this out before the next session though, and then I'll just explain how. Huh. All right. Feel like I'm kind of 0 for 2 on the day with the. What's going on here? There it goes. With this action, actually 0 for 3 with this action, and then with the pseudo states, and then now with this. But sometimes you have those days. Oh, it's already an hour. All right, well, that was crazy actually, because I thought I'd have so much more done in this hour. So I did make it look a little nicer. Like we're looking at the test view here, and with the 3. Oh, I forgot. Let me refresh that. So with the 3 side by side, it looks like this. It's got space on the sides. We need to style these cards. We need to finish these off. And then, yeah, like these headings, this input, it all needs some work. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these issues I ran into and just research them. I won't fix I want to do this like live. I want everyone to see what's happening. So I won't fix them, but I'm going to figure out what's going on. And then maybe next week we can just do a little cleanup or next time on Wednesday, just do a little cleanup catch up and I'll just get everything up to speed. And then we can keep going from there. But as you can see, it's looking decent. This was kind of a cool metaphor for real developing. Like sometimes you have those days where a lot of stuff doesn't work and you think you're going to get a lot done in that hour and you really get nothing done. You get like some padding on the sides and some padding on the top done. But that's just the way it goes. So I'm going to end it for now. And Wednesday, same time. And then on Friday, I won't be in the office. So Friday, I'm not going to do one. But the following Monday, I'll pick it right back up. And like I said originally, I'm just going to keep doing this until it's either built or there's 0 people watching every time. So if you watched today, thank you. That's it. And see you Wednesday.